Welcome in and thanks for joining me. Today, I'd like to talk to those of you out there who are meditators, who have been practicing for, anywhere from 6 months to a few years or longer. And you've mostly been, practicing a mindfulness practice or a more secular meditation practice and kind of wondering what's next, right? So I meet these people often, they reach out to me to kind of check in, get some help on their practice, to see where to go next, learning different options. And, just first thing, congratulations, like that's a good thing. So I always tell people that, like, if you're watching or listening to this and you're at that place where you're really excited about meditation, you've gone through some of the ups and downs and you're seeing the benefits emotionally, mentally, in your life, how you work with others, how you work with yourself. And now you're looking to go deeper. Congrats. That's a great thing. So I just want to say that off the bat. I think I also want to say, I used to believe something that I don't necessarily believe 100% now, which is that what you're currently doing, just having maybe a basic mindfulness of breath practice or something like that, that what you're currently doing is not enough. I used to believe at some point we need to kind of go deeper, but now my belief has changed. I mean, it really depends on the person, depends on what you want out of your meditation practice, why you're doing it in the first place. And so for some of you, that might just be fine, depending on your goals and why you meditate, why you practice, right? But for those of you who listen or watch my content often, you'll notice I am often talking about the deeper end and, of course, relating that more to the Buddhist path, which doesn't mean you have to be Buddhist. I hope that's clear and already implicit and explicit. You don't have to be Buddhist to learn from Buddhism and to take your practice deeper through it. But I tend to focus on that. But I just wanted to say before I go into some other areas that for some of you, you might be fine, for now. And sometimes when you add in more things or you add in a little bit of complexity, it can also take away from the simplicity that you've been working with. Because at the end of the day, whether we're doing a practice towards what we call awakening or liberation in Buddhism, or we're just doing a practice to understand how we get stressed out and understand how we can, augment that, feel a little bit more grounded in our life. Both are working with the mind. Both are working with the body and emotions. So, there's always a deeper end with that, obviously. But the main point is that we're working with our mind. We're working with our daily life, with our emotions. So with that said, what to do for those of you who have been practicing for a while? Maybe you've had a more straightforward mindfulness of breath practice or have tried a few other kinds of meditations and you're interested in what might be out there. So I've done some content on this before, but I'll mention it again. For me, it's really important at this point that we actually find a path. And the reason for this is because when we simply kind of cherry pick different meditation techniques or practices, we might get some experiences. We might, be able to sort of learn about ourselves in different ways, grow different qualities through different meditation practices or techniques, which is great. But we don't have an overarching view of where we're trying to go or what we're doing them for. And that view needs to be cultivated and deepened, in my opinion. And so a path, hopefully one that is well-trodden, that's been time-tested by lots of different human beings, a path can offer us that platform, that sort of depth of not only different techniques and meditation practices to understand our minds, understand how to move away from our relationship to stagnation and contraction and move towards more openness, more compassion, etc. So a path can do that, but it also provides a view. It provides essentially, what are we trying to obtain? What are we trying to get used to, right? Is one way to think of it. And of course, I think all of us who meditate, we have some kind of view, but often that view is not necessarily explicit. It's not something we could articulate to someone. And so, for instance, in different kinds of Buddhism, we study the view of, let's just call it awakening now, but there's different kinds of views within that process. But let's just say the view of awakening, or the view of freeing ourselves from what we call dukkha, or dissatisfaction or suffering. And we study this view to familiarize ourselves not only with where we want to go and how we want to use our practice, but also what we need to shed, what we need to see as our blind spots, as the areas that are actually keeping us stagnated, keeping us stuck, keeping us constricted around our emotions and identities and thought patterns, right, and behaviors. So I found this to be one of the most important parts of engaging with a let's just call it a more traditional path of meditation, is we have a view not only to see where we're going, but a view to uncover where we're stuck, essentially, right? So that's one thing I would say is, and I'm not going to advocate for any one path for you, right? I think for those of you in that space where you've been practicing and you're kind of looking to go deeper, it's a really wonderful time in your life, in my opinion. For me, it was a really wonderful stage to sort of explore different, like I said, well-trodden, time-tested paths. For me, it was mostly in the different kinds of Hindu traditions, as well as eventually in different Buddhist lineages. And, as most of you know, I landed on a few of the lineages within Tibetan Buddhism. I'll just call it Himalayan Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism, though there are some specificities within that. I landed there, and that was a fit for me, and I've just sort of stuck with that. And it has not gotten boring in 25 years. It just deepens because there's so much to learn about ourselves. So that's kind of what fit me, but that might not necessarily fit you. Of course, that's kind of the area, I guess, or the path or tradition I generally share from. So I'm going to share some things from there, but I just want to say it doesn't have to be yours. And that journey of exploring what lineages call to you, and the view they're uncovering through the practice, that's really important. And at some point, we have to land on something. We have to actually adopt it. It's sort of like we're hungry and we're also excited to eat, right? Because we're hungry. And we go out looking for a restaurant, or we go to the grocery store looking for, things we want to put together for a meal. And eventually we need to cook and eat it, right? We need to actually, we can't just look for it. We have to cook and eat it. But, there's no right way of like how long the search takes, or, how long you should spend, because we need to not only feel connected intuitively to a lineage or a path, or a tradition. It needs to become, how do you say, we need to be able to intelligently approach it. We need to also use our critical mind to see, well, how is this? Is this really going to bring about what I want to bring about? So I just say that. And each of us has our own process with that. So I don't want to say exactly how that's going to look like for you. So coming from the Himalayan Buddhist traditions, as I said, we make the view explicit. And the view here is, actually, the view can be shared in lots of different ways. Often I'm sharing it through the view of what are called the four seals of Dharma, right? Which are impermanence, dukkha, non-dual wisdom, and nirvana, or awakening. And these are different, not only views we're getting used to, but they're also things that we uncover. For instance, the first one on impermanence, we would take that as, it could be an object of meditation, but it could also be sort of something we're looking towards, meaning we're using our mindfulness practice, our awareness practice, to notice the changing nature of, could be anything, thoughts, emotions, the way we perceive self, different aspects of phenomena around us. The weather could be something as simple as that. And we're using our mindfulness practice to understand something, not as a belief, but kind of as a part of nature, maybe to put it that way, or a part of life. And, sometimes we need a little bit of a pointer, just like if we're driving somewhere we don't know, we need a sign. We need signs to sort of point us, okay, if you want to go here, take a left. And so similarly, when we study the teachings, when we actually engage with some information on impermanence from the Buddhist teachings, we are able to find a direction, find a way to seek. So it's not just seeking in general. We find little pointers through teachers, obviously through sutras or teachings of the Buddha, if we're interested in that path, and these point us in a direction. We also inevitably, I would say, in any spiritual path, we inevitably end up working with our dukkha, and that's a Buddhist word, but this can apply to more than just Buddhism. And dukkha, some people translate it as suffering, but actually, there's not one word to translate the Pali and Sanskrit word. It's a very full term, because it can mean our gross pain and suffering, physical, emotional, etc. But it can also mean the subtle dissatisfaction we experience, kind of the urge to shift or do something else, meaning like we get bored and we need to move. That's also considered dukkha. And also the nature of change itself, not that things are changing, but that the moment we get a little bit of satisfaction, that's sort of the beginning of the dissatisfaction or the beginning of change. So that is also part of dukkha. So it gets very deep, this principle. And so my main point here is this becomes a lens for acknowledging that pain is not something, well, first of all, it's not avoidable for most of us. And it also doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's just a part of life. And if we turn more towards it through awareness, through mindfulness, we can learn about its origin, we can learn about its causes, and we can remedy its causes. So that's an important part of the Buddhist path. So we need to first diagnose, what the issue is, then we look at it, then we work with it. So the medicine is the meditation, actually. The medicine is getting to know impermanence and dukkha intimately. And then, of course, these will eventually lead to non-dual wisdom. Now, in the Himalayan Buddhist traditions, we often study non-dual wisdom quite a bit through different philosophical treatises and texts and commentaries, because it's a very complicated sign. It's like if you looked at a sign and it's made of 30 letters in a language you don't know. It's just sort of like you have no idea what that means. So you have to do a little bit of digging. Often we have to find some teachers or at least some commentaries to unpack it. And then we kind of learn why that's important, right? Because non-dual wisdom is, in Buddhism at least, is our key to freedom. It's our key to how reality is actually functioning. So we don't have to keep swimming upriver. We can learn to swim downriver. And this is all part of this term view, or in Tibetan tawa. So we are working with view. We're working not only to understand it conceptually, but to actually see it. And just to say something about the Buddhist path, this is something I really love, because it's not something we have to believe. Of course, initially we're not going to understand it. So we need some kind of interest, and that could be, a temporary belief, a sense of, oh, this is kind of interesting. I want to pursue that. Sounds kind of like there's some truth there. And then we go for it. But eventually we just want to see it as nature, as part of our life, as part of the natural world. And again, we're trying to find out, are we living in line with nature or not? And I don't mean nature like going off to the woods. I mean the nature of life, right? The nature of our experience, the nature of how emotions, thoughts, identities we hold, relationships, how these all can function in a much more fluid way. As I said, like instead of swimming upriver, we learn to go with the current. And so often initially we don't even realize we're swimming against the stream. We just know there's dukkha, and we experience it in various ways, as I said, and we don't realize the reason for that. And the reason for that is because we're swimming upstream from a Buddhist perspective. So again, this is part of view, not about belief, about view. And then these three, as we embody them more, as we see them more, as we unpack and uncover and shed, I like this word, shed the shells that are keeping us bound to dukkha, we start to discover our innate awakened mind, or in other words, this fourth seal, nirvana, is peace, or we can even say nirvana is beyond. How do you say it? Peace and not peace, but let's just say nirvana is peace for now. And and so this is a big topic. I'm not going to be able to go into too much describing nirvana, but basically it's related to the first three. So we start with impermanence, we then work with dukkha, then we start to come into contact with non-dual wisdom. So I'm sharing all this because the four seals of Dharma become a roadmap for how we actually deepen our meditation practice, because we meditate so we can see nature, so we can see the nature of mind, we can see the nature of experience, the nature of dukkha, impermanence, non-dual wisdom, etc. We can see it as it is, right? And I think this points out something interesting, where I think often, myself included, when we hear about enlightenment or nirvana or liberation or awakening, however we want to call it, it seems like some kind of experience that's post-human and I don't know how to say it, like almost like godlike or something like that. But actually, when we start to study the Dharma and when we meditate, to connect with these things I'm sharing today, these four seals, or at least the first three, what we actually discover is that enlightenment is our basic state. And what we're experiencing now is actually unnatural. Now, I'm not enlightened, so I can't say that 100%. But through my study and exploration of Buddha Dharma over the past 25 years, I have that belief, but also kind of inference that's possible, and that's grown for me over the years. Meaning, the idea that it's just some sort of pie in the sky thing, it's become more clear what that is. And even though I don't think I'm very, I think often I'm further from enlightenment, but the faith, the sense of that what I'm experiencing now, how I'm working with my emotions and thoughts and identities, is kind of unnatural. That's become more clear. Therefore, inferring that awakening or enlightenment could be something more natural. And one of my teachers, Sonri Rinpoche, he said something like this: that sort of the path of awakening, it's not really attaining something necessarily. You're just removing what's getting in the way of our natural state, right? So it's a really interesting way to look at it, and I like this way of looking at it because it allows my meditation to really be expansive in scope. I'm not saying in experience necessarily. Often when I'm meditating, I'm just sitting there with my crap. It's not sexy at all the majority of the time, and I think a lot of you can probably relate to that. But the scope of what I'm getting used to, or the scope of what I want to uncover in this view of awakening, that is, it's not exciting, but there's something very juicy there. There's something very, I don't know. My interest doesn't wane for that, even though that's very challenging, right? So this is what I'd recommend. And some of this might have been a little more of a deeper dive than some of you need right now. But my point is, I wanted to give you a little bit of context in the Buddhist path for those of you interested in exploring that. But I also wanted to encourage you to do your search, and that basically we need some kind of deeper point of why we're meditating. This is often where I see people get stuck, because they're just meditating and they don't realize they already have a view they're trying to bring about. Meaning, most of us just want some calmness, right? Some stress relief, which, as I said, is not bad, but it's not that deep. Meaning, I don't know how to say that. We can get that pretty easily through meditation. And then there's this kind of sense of, now what, did I accomplish it? And no, there's so much more we can explore and uncover in our human experience, and so much more wisdom and compassion we can uncover, which is so satisfying, right? In this other kind of way. So I think that's about it. I'm going to stop there. So thanks so much. If you listened or watched this to the end, I do appreciate you. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'd really appreciate a like or a comment, just so other people can see it, so it gets out there a little bit more. If you're listening on Spotify or another podcast platform, feel free to go to my website anytime, reach out, just tell me you're listening. I just know people are kind of connecting with it or not. And if you have some things you want to learn about, or you're interested in me speaking on, message me through my website at scotttusa.com. All right, everyone, happy meditating. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you soon. Thanks.